Are you guys ready to see what happens to Adam in the Qur'an? Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum, my friends. Welcome back to another episode. I'm Miraj Muhyiddin. Today we are wrapping up one part of the entire Lang lecture, which is his journey with the story of Adam in Surah Al-Baqarah. In this, what we're going to do is start unpacking and wrapping up exactly what he is saying about this before he moves on to the next part of his discovery here. But first, let's just take a listen again to those first verses from the story.
وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين وقلنا يا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة وكلا منها رغدا حيث شئتما ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فتكونا من الظالمين.
So if you recall from the previous episode, we put up this chart right here. Let's bring it up again there. This chart on the Bible and the Qur'an, comparing and contrasting the two. And we ultimately said that the Bible story really expresses God's fury, his anger at Adam and Eve and their descendants, whereas the Qur'anic story is different. And we are starting to discover these differences. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to finish the story right here and then come to conclusion about how is God approaching mankind, because we're definitely clear here what is the Quranic narrative right here, because this sets us up for how we now view our relationship with God once we know how God views his relationship with us. Now, what have we established so far? Remember that God is creating man in a positive role in the Quran, that God is completely aware of his plan. There's no surprises, there's no glitches in this story that he has written. And God has also reminded the angels that we have an incredible potential that we can fulfill here, right? So what makes us so special? That we have intellect, we've been taught the names, that we can understand the difference between good and evil. We're talking about morality. And this is the big one, we can exercise choice. God has given us the opportunity to exercise choice. And again, I said in the previous episode, Some of us just take it for granted all the time that we can exercise choice. But everything, when you wake up in the morning, you have a choice about how you want to start your day. We just kind of do the same thing over and over again, so we don't recognize that's a choice because maybe we're an autopilot on it. But we have a choice. We have a choice about whether to get angry or not angry. We have a choice of whether we should be generous or not generous. Every single second of our day, we are exercising our choice. The question is how awake and aware and alive do we want to be to the choices that we're making and the downstream effect that those choices have on our lives. So this is where we are at right now, and we've been developing this idea, and the important takeaway from this idea of choice, I want to really kind of hammer that in here. I realize this is just kind of hitting me in the face just now. Let me turn over to this camera over here. Okay. The important thing when it comes to choice is that, see, in the biblical account, Adam eats from this tree, right? The fruit from the tree, and God is just furious. And not only does he banish Adam and, punish him for that, but then he sets up an angel around the tree to protect the tree. Which, when I think about it, and I'm just being candid with you, if God was really that concerned about the tree, why didn't he put the angel there in the first place? Unless God didn't recognize that Adam might eat from the tree, which means that God doesn't truly understand, what his creation would do. He didn't really fully write out the story, and Adam kind of tripped up the story, and now God has to create this workaround. It's like kind of if you build a house and then it gets robbed, then you put in this alarm system, but did you not have the omniscience to know? And so this is where it starts affecting, the biblical understanding of who God is as this angry, wrathful being who wasn't completely omniscient about what is going to happen in the future. Now, in that story, the emphasis is placed on the actual tree itself. Right? And then that Adam did the wrong thing. What Dr. Lang is suggesting that it's not the apple or the fruit. That's not the bad thing. Because in the Qur'an, it says whatever Adam did was a slip. It wasn't an eternally damning mistake. He didn't commit adultery. He didn't kill somebody. Remember, Dr. Lang says it's not like he killed somebody. He just ate a piece of fruit. I mean, it's just really, just actually take a listen.
A slip, I thought? But then maybe I was trying to force the traditional understanding, the traditional interpretation. Maybe it was just a slip. I mean, after all, they didn't commit murder. They didn't commit robbery, rape, pillaging, assault. They ate a couple of pieces of fruit. Well, it's not the greatest sin in the history of humanity by any means.
So what Dr. Lang is saying here is that Adam eating from the tree had to happen. And we know it had to happen according to the Qur'anic narrative because God is saying, I know what I am doing. Adam being placed near the tree and Adam eating from the tree, this was all written, preordained. God knew that this was going to happen, and Adam did that because God knows his creation better than we know ourselves. This is the Islamic understanding of it. God can't be surprised by anything. Then, in the Islamic perspective, then you're not omniscient. And we believe that God is Al-Alim. He is aware of everything. He knows all. He sees all, right? He hears all. God is completely aware. He's completely omniscient. There is no surprise. God's never surprised. God's never in shock, nor is he, have to come up with a contingency plan and set up an angel to protect something he should have done before. That's not part of the Islamic conception of God. So when we get into this is what Dr. Lang is saying. That it is not so much the tree that is evil or the fruit. It is just a simulation that Adam had to be placed into so that he could understand what it means for the first time in his life to exercise choice. Is that clear? It is the act of choosing, which is what's so important about this part of the story, about Adam eating from the tree. Yes, did he make the wrong mistake? Yes, he should have listened to God, but that was a slip. He forgot. But that is the lesson. And so what Dr. Lang is saying right here is that it had to happen so that, it's like if you're a programmer and you write a program, right? You have to beta test it. That's what we call it. You have to make sure the program works. And so that's kind of what's happening here is that Adam is beta testing himself. Oh, I have a choice. It's the first choice you've ever given me. Let me try to choose. He made the wrong mistake. That's okay. at least you exercise choice, which is something that you never did before. So now Adam has learned the names, 1. He understands the difference between good and evil, 2. And now the third stage of his development, he is exercising. He's acting on those first 2 to exercise a choice. Now, as Dr. Lang says it, man is ready. Let's listen to Dr. Lang continue this conversation.
But I thought, maybe I'm getting this wrong. Maybe God just blows off into an angry rampage the next verse. So I look at the next one and it says, and then Adam received words from his Lord. And God turned to him mercifully. For he's oft returning, ever merciful.
فتلقى آدم من ربه كلمات فتاب عليه إنه هو التواب الرحيم.
Well, if I had any doubts up till now that God is not enraged by what this has happened, that God hasn't prepared mankind for this choice, for what was eventually going to happen, that all this was preparation for mankind to begin his earthly sojourn in this famous allegory. If I had any doubts before now, I had them, certainly didn't have them after reading this verse. This verse is entirely consoling, reaching and merciful, reaching out to mankind in mercy. Mankind goes to earth. He's obviously afraid. He obviously feels remorse. He's in an unfamiliar environment. And what does God do? He turns to him. He turns to him. In Arabic, the word has the meaning of like a father turning towards an infant or a child or somebody, or a parent, a mother turning towards her child. And he turns to him mercifully, and for God is oft returning, ever merciful. And Adam receives words from his Lord. What kind of words? Probably words of consolation, words of hope, words tell him not to be scared. And in the next verse, we see those are exactly the type of words that Adam receives. He says, go down, Adam and his spouse. Go down from this state, all of you together. Repeating that again, just so that we know that this is not a punishment here. Go down from this state, all of you together, and truly there will come to you guidance from me. And whoever follows my guidance has nothing to fear, nor shall they grieve. It is an emotional picture. This young couple is here, in fear, and in shame, feeling remorse, and God reaches out to them and turns towards them and tells them, you have nothing to fear, nor shall you grieve. I know this is tough for you, but you've been prepared for it up till now, through your entire existence. It had to happen. This is a necessary stage in your development, in your growth, but just hang in there, follow my guidance, be true to me and I'll be true to you. I'll guide you, I'll help you, I'll do whatever you need. Just follow my guidance and you have nothing to fear, nor shall you grieve.
What an absolutely emotional read that Dr. Lang has on this. I mean, it's so moving. The way he describes it, it really, again, I've listened to this talk so many times, and when he describes this, the way he describes it as a parent turning to their child, right? He says, be true to me and I'll be true to you. I'll guide you, I'll help you. Whatever you need, just follow my guidance. And if you follow my guidance, you will have no fear, nor will you grieve. Now, this idea of no fear and no grief is such a big topic. In fact, all of Revelation is based on this concept of no fear and no grief. And I have to put a pin in that, the way I put a pin in some other topics in the story of Adam, because I don't want to distract you from just getting to the purpose of life part. But we will absolutely, probably after this episode, if we haven't gotten to it already before this series, is get into this concept, what does it mean to have a life of no fear and no grief? Because that is the promise of Revelation. That is the truest gift of Revelation. If there was ever a gift, is to have a life of no fear and no grief. But remind me later if I don't get to it after this series, but trust me, I have it at the top of my head here. So anyway, as Dr. Lang says, this is a very emotional picture. God is turning lovingly to Adam. So what are we seeing from the Bible story right here and the Qur'anic story? Let's fill in the blanks right here, right? So here in the Bible, God had to rest, God is surprised, he blames Eve, he punishes both, he punishes us downstream from our forefathers, God puts an angel to protect the tree, and he is furious. That's setting you up for some anger, some fire and brimstone there. It's very puritanical. And then you can understand why, since I mentioned the word puritanical, the Puritans had this fury in their teachings, right? The damnation, right? Sinners in the hands of an angry God. This is all famous, famous literature about kind of the Protestant kind of approach to the faith. Now let's look at the Qur'an, right? God doesn't need rest. He never needed rest. God is all-knowing, all-aware. He knows exactly what he's doing, and God called what Adam did a slip. Now, what happens is that God is not punishing mankind, okay? Because right here, look at it. What does God call it right here? He's calling it a slip, okay? The tree, it was not so much of a big deal that Adam ate from the tree. I'm not trying to minimize it also completely and pretend like it didn't exist. It happened. But what's more important is that God is he is pointing out that for the first time, Adam and Eve together are making a choice. What we are seeing from the Qur'anic narrative also is that Adam and Eve are equivalent. There is no like, damn it, woman, and damn it, man. There is none of that. They both equally accept responsibility, and God equally tells them about of what they have done. So we don't have this in the Islamic concept that woman messed up and she misled Adam, and she's this whispering, satanic, tool towards mankind, and because of that, man will be, on top of woman, that will have power over. This is not part of the Islamic concept. And I think this is really important to just recognize here, because a lot of times people from this tradition superimpose their paradigms to judge this system over here. But this system doesn't have that. I'll give you a classic, more modern example of that. Take slavery, for example, right? In the West, slavery and the concept of slavery is so horrific. Whereas in other pre-modern societies where there was what is called slavery, that was really just servants. No one ever treated slaves the way kind of the Western colonialism treated human beings. That was just horrific. And when people call out other communities for the fact that they had what they like to use the word as slavery, it's a completely different concept. So you're projecting your own feelings onto other people who don't even hold to those beliefs. In the same way, Islam does not hold to this belief that Eve is blamed first, right? And that there's a hierarchy now. That's not in the Islamic concept from the story of Adam. But what's most important from this whole story, if you look at all of this right here, right? If we're seeing fury in the biblical story, in the Qur'an, we are seeing love. God is Tawwabur Rahim. He is returning. He's turning to Adam with love. And you heard from Dr. Lang, be with me and I will be with you. And God says in the Quran so many times, He remembers those who remember Him. He wants the connection to happen. So you're seeing this beautiful, emotional, heartfelt, let's make it even more, does that make it more alive, right? Heartfelt display of love, of mercy, right? It's a moment of tenderness. How else can we describe this, right? God is gentle with Adam and Eve. He is understanding. And finally, what do I want to say about this? Where can I put it here? God is rooting for us. He is rooting for Adam and Eve because He is saying, look, it's okay. You made a mistake. This had to happen. This was part of your development. Now listen, in the future, you will probably make mistakes again, but I'm teaching you how to do what? How to, like I call it, the Control-Alt-Delete. How to reset the hardware and the software. Your job is to learn and to grow, and you cannot learn without making mistakes. There's no such thing as learning if you don't make mistakes. So you have to make mistakes. It's part of your programming. When you make mistakes, don't worry. You're not going to break the hardware. Just Control-Alt-Delete. We call that Tawbah, right? Not repentance, which is a very kind of heavy, it's infused with a lot of biblical overlays. In Islam, it's turning back. Just like we said, God is Tawwabur Rahim. Tawwab is Tawbah, to turn back to God, to reorient, not to feel horrible about yourself all the time and be like, I'll never be forgiven. It's not part of this. And we will dive into Tawbah after this series. Again, another pin. We have 3 pins now. We're talking about the worst sin, which is the sin of arrogance. We have to talk about this concept of no fear and no grief. And then we're going to talk about the idea of Tawbah. What does it mean to turn back to God from the Islamic perspective? But there's no guilt involved in that. Once you have done it, you have full belief that you are completely factory reset again to your unblemished position. We believe in this as Muslims, right? God is teaching Adam because he is rooting for us, because he wants Adam to do what? To rise to the highest version of himself. Woo! We have covered a lot now, and we aren't even done with this episode right here. So we just talked about all of this right here, and what I want to do is I want to end by kind of giving you, an analogy that, occurs in my life, just to kind of help bring this home, this idea of what does it mean that this life is a necessary phase in our development. This occurred to me a couple of years ago with my firstborn. And I'll be totally honest with you. I have learned more about my faith and my role as a believer from my children than any teacher has ever taught me. The act of being a parent is very powerful. For those of you who had the opportunity to become parents, okay? And for those of you who are children, still you can kind of take from what I'm about to tell you. Being a parent means that you are a caretaker for your child. It means that you are actually a Rabb. See, we use the word Rabb to describe Allah as R-A-B-B. I guess you would write it out, right? Rabb means your Lord, your caretaker. Well, if you use a lowercase r, it just means like you're in charge of, you're a caretaker for someone. So in that way, I am my children's Rabb. My wife and I are both my children's Rabb. We take care of our children. Just like in my house, my wife and I are the Malik. We are the king or the in charge of our house with a lowercase, right? So in many ways, we have some of the responsibilities that God names upon himself. We have that in terms of our relationship with our children. Now, thinking about the way Dr. Lang described the story of a parent turning to their child with love, in this instance describing the story of Adam, it got me thinking about my own experiences with my children. Specifically, probably one of the most difficult days emotionally for me as a parent. What was that day? It was a day my wife and I had to drop off my firstborn at kindergarten for the very first time. Now, for those of you who aren't parents, it might feel like I'm overblowing this, but for those of you who are parents who had to go through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. My son was 3 years old when we dropped him off. I think he was 3 when we dropped him off at preschool for the first time. And believe me, my wife and I did not want to send him to preschool. If we could, I would keep my boys with me at home till they were 20, 25, 27, until forever. I would love my kids to just be with me all the time because I love spending time with them. But we recognize also it's not good for kids not to get socialized with other children, not to learn how to share and to learn. And then they got to learn math and be part of the educational system and so forth. And there's so many benefits from being around other children and whatnot that we recognize, look, a necessary part of his development is that he has to move to school and go to school. There's certain things that school provides that we can't provide. I can't show my kid how to deal with a bully at home. Right? I can't show my kid the value of patience or of making good decisions or listening to the teacher. I can't do that at home. So for me and my wife, it is necessary and has been necessary for us to send our children to school at a reasonable age. We don't want to do it, but we have to do it. Now imagine up front, it was so difficult for me, the idea of dropping off my child in a foreign environment, and he's too young for me to truly be able to explain to him what's going on. The emotional distress of that separation was so hard for me. I just told my wife, you know what, you do it. That's your job. I got to work that day anyway. I'll be at the hospital. Let me know how it goes. So my wife had to go and drop my son off at school on the first day. And I knew it was going to be an emotional day because I was waiting. I was in the operating room waiting, and all of a sudden, I can see my phone go off. And my wife is calling, and I pick it up, and she's crying in the car in the parking lot after she dropped my son off at school. And she's crying to me. I'm in the operating room and I'm trying not to cry because I'm upset about what she's telling me, but she's saying it was horrible. And he just cried and cried. And the look he gave me when I walked away, it was kind of this look of, why are you abandoning me, right? And she said it was very difficult. And the teachers tell parents, just go in there, drop the kid off and get out. The more you try to coddle it and say, it's going to be okay and this and that, the more it just creates more drama and a lot harder. And so there's a necessary phase when you first take your kids and drop them off at school where it takes about a week, maybe 2 weeks, for some kids 2 months, 3 months, for them to get over the fact that this is a new stage of their development where they have to be separated from their parents for, 4 hours of the day, 8 hours of the day, or so forth. Now, imagine if I, as the parent, could explain to my child why I'm dropping them off. What would I tell them? Because the child, first of all, let's take it from the kid's perspective. So you're a 3-year-old, pretend you're a 3-year-old. Just close your eyes, channel your inner 3-year-old, and you're being dropped off at school. So your whole life, for 3 years, you've had this blissful life. You've been living in this Garden of Eden with your parents. It's like you wake up, someone's changing your diaper. Then you go and someone's feeding you. Then they're playing with you. Then they'll change your diaper again. And then you're sleepy, you yawned, oh, let's put you to sleep. Everything is being taken care of. That is heaven. That's paradise for a child, of a 3-year-old. Now, all of a sudden, you are warm, the security of your mother's, loving embrace, your dad is there to tickle you. Now, that child, all of a sudden, everything was going great. And now, all of a sudden, the parents decide, it's time to move on to something else, something completely foreign. And the child is saying, wait, everything was good. And all of a sudden, why are you putting me in this foreign environment? I don't know this lady who's my teacher. And who are all these kids around me? What are they going to do to me? Wait, you're leaving me? How can you leave me? Did I do something wrong? Are you abandoning me? Are you leaving me forever? What is going on? Imagine the child, right? Now, I'm not saying 3-year-olds have all of these emotions, but there's definitely something there because the attachment instinct, really sends them into a tizzy. Now, how would you, as a parent, explain to that child? Well, recognize, first of all, there's only so much you can explain to a child because a 3-year-old's capacity to understand the importance of socialization is like this to nothing. So you can't really explain to them through socialization and the philosophy of child rearing and everything that you've read in parenting books, why it's important for them to do it. You can't because they can't understand that. So what are you going to tell your child? You will do the best that you can to convey to your child, look, I can't explain to you now why I'm doing this. You will not understand while you're doing this. But what I can tell you this is, I love you. I am not forgetting you. You are not being punished for this. You have to do it. You don't understand now. But I promise you, while you are at school, all mommy and daddy are going to be thinking about is you. There's nothing that's going to be coming into our mind other than you and the pain that you are going through on this first day or this second day or this third day. And we promise you this, we will be there before the school bell rings, waiting for you to run back into our arms. We have to do this though. We have to do this. And I know you don't get it, but trust me as your parent that this is a necessary stage in your development. And the reason why I didn't do it at 1 year old and 2 years old is because you were not ready yet. But you did something at 3. What was that thing? I don't know. Maybe they're potty trained now, right? They know now to use the potty. Maybe that's the thing. You exhibited that you are now ready for this next stage of development, which is now that you have to go to school. So imagine the pain of a father or a mother, more for a mother, I would say, naturally, their sense of mercy to their child far exceeds the father's sense of mercy. The pain of separation, very difficult for a parent, worse than a child. But the child can't understand that. Now, what happens when the child's at school? What happens if the child's at school and there are other kids who maybe were dropped off at 2 years old, so they're pros at being in school. And now this child is upset and crying, and now those other children tell the child, oh, your parents left you here because they don't like you. They're mad at you. You don't know what you did at home? Oh, you remember that time you drew on the wall? Well, now because of that, all kids have to go to school now, and we are all pulled away from the paradise of being home. Your parents aren't thinking about you. Right now, while you're here crying, they're furious at you, and that's why they sent you to school. See, that to me is kind of like how the biblical narrative compares to the Qur'anic narrative. In the Qur'anic narrative, God is At-Tawwab Rahim. He is oft returning, always thinking about us, blessing us with His love and His mercy, giving us guidance right? It's like me telling my son when I drop him off, look, listen, I have to drop you off, but know this, just listen to your teacher and guidance will come from your teacher, and whoever follows their teacher, you'll have nothing to fear nor will you grieve. Just do this for the day and I'll be right there at 3 p.m. to pick you up again. Follow my guidance. So the Islamic understanding is from a place of what? From a place of love. God is merciful to us. He has incredible tenderness towards his creation. He is understanding. He's gentle and he's rooting for us. Right? We haven't even gotten to the purpose of life yet, but we are just tearing down walls of misunderstanding about who we are and who God is in our lives. This is God, according to the Islamic conception. This is Allah. This is Ar-Rahman. This is Ar-Rahim, his most common attributes. He is Tawwab Ar-Rahim, the oft-turning, the merciful. And let us not forget this, okay? If you get nothing else from this episode, if for some reason you can't watch the next few episodes, which you better not because it's going to get better. But if nothing else, know that this is God. Don't let people tell you the narrative that God is upset at you and that you are not special and he's forgotten about you, that you were just an unwanted child. And you have to toil and cry and get bullied at recess because God just cast you out to the school because he didn't want to deal with you at home. Know that could not be further from the truth. That's, in the Islamic concept and our belief, that's a lie. If anything else, for those of you out there right now who feel lost and who feel alone, who feel stressed out, who feel that God has forgotten them, who feels that God doesn't think highly of them, who thinks God doesn't think that they're special, for those of you who feel like you are nothing and you are nobody, right? Don't buy into that. Because God loves you. He loves me. He loves all of us. He is beyond our understanding of how much love he has. The common refrain is, how could God love me for what I've been through? God loves you. There's no 3-year-old, I would imagine, who is not loved by their mother. There's nothing a 3-year-old could do that a mother's love would be decreased for them. Even if they did the worst thing, a mother would still love that 3-year-old. The most painful thing for a mother is if that 3-year-old at school forgot about his mom and started having a negative view of his mother, or started thinking the wrong thoughts about the mother's actions, started ascribing the wrong intentions to what he read into the mother's actions. That's the most painful thing for a mom, for that child to turn against the mother. And so we have to be very careful about how we understand God. And then secondarily, if God loves us as much as this, how can we be so harsh and judgmental and have fury for other people? God loves all of us. How dare we show anything but love for our fellow human beings? And again, I'm not trying to be preachy here. I recognize that I am preaching a little bit right now, but it really bugs me when I see other people who claim to be following the example of the Prophet Muhammad and claim to love God, to show nothing but harsh judgment, nothing but just anger and fury towards any of God's creation. Because that is not the divine way. God loves everybody, right? His mercy extends to all of creation. How dare you withhold your mercy from that creation which God shows mercy to? And so this is a reminder for all of us that if we truly want to understand Islam and follow the example of the prophets, not the Prophet Muhammad, but all the prophets, starting back with Adam, we have to remember that God mercifully turned to us. We should turn mercifully to God with love and appreciation, and mercifully to everyone else, and exude that same mercy, tenderness, understanding, gentleness, and root for other people the way God is rooting for us. So, I know this was kind of like a deeper dive into this, but really important conversation to have here. And we will go into a lot more of this stuff in future episodes. In the next episode, we've covered kind of the Adam story. Now we're going to talk about what does Dr. Jeffery Lang do with this, right? Because he's going to say, look, we recognize that we have this idea of man has intellect, and man can choose between good and evil. That's morality and the choice combined together. But what do we do with this idea of suffering? Remember, that was the original first episode. He's like, why do people have to suffer? The problem of evil. So now he's going to take everything we studied in the first section, the problem of evil, combine it with this idea of man has intelligence and choice, and put it together to work towards the meaning of life. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please feel free to comment. I love when you guys comment on these videos. It gives me a purpose, and it gives me insight into what you guys are thinking as we move through this. Can't wait to see you guys in the next episode. Make sure you share this with anyone who you think might benefit from it. And I promise you, God willing, it will only get better from here. This is nothing compared to what Dr. Lang has to offer us in the future episodes. I will see you guys soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.